Hello, everybody, and welcome to another iconic episode of A Good Lawyer podcast, part of the EIL network, Excellence in Lawyering. And this is where I delve into the captivating world of brilliant legal minds, such as with our guest today. However, our guest is not a lawyer or an attorney, but she does 150% assist lawyers with their cases with a specific area of law cases, criminal cases, etc. But you know what? I'm going to let her tell you all about this. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the podcast LINDSEY DWYER-TONG. LINDSEY, welcome to A Good Lawyer.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today.
The pleasure is all mine. So tell folks a little bit about your background, your backstory, where you're sprung from, as we like to say here in Texas, and what a unique area of practice that you have. So tell folks a little bit about it.
Well, I am proud to say that I am a native Texan, born and raised in Austin. Graduated from St. Edward's University with my bachelor's and went to UT Austin for my master's. I've been a therapist for 15 years. And my background has been in mental health court, legal consulting, trauma therapy, addiction, and mental illness.
That is fantastic. St. Edward's is a wonderful, wonderful school. I have some good friends that have graduated from there and, ironically enough, went on to finish their education there at UT Austin. Go Longhorns, right? So in the title of your company, you have clinical consultation and concierge services. However, you also do forensic consultations, crisis intervention. The first question I really want the audience and lawyers listening right now to know is how important is the evaluation of someone if they're being charged with something, just something bizarre, whether it be a criminal matter, even quite frankly, a civil matter. But what role does mental health play in all of this? And does mental health know no boundaries or socioeconomic boundaries, background status, etc.? Tell folks a little bit about that.
So I want to start with saying mental health, substance abuse does not discriminate. It affects everyone. And it is crucial in understanding that the person we're looking at is not just a defendant. It's not just someone that has been charged or allegedly committed a crime, someone that has been charged with a crime. It's a human being with a backstory. So the crux of my practice is, whether it's crisis intervention, concierge therapy, or forensic consulting, is I want to understand who this person is and what happened to them. So I talk a lot about trauma-informed care, and that is incorporated throughout all my practice. Trauma-informed care is where we ask not what is wrong with this person, but what happened to this person. What happened that led them to develop, their communication skills, their coping skills. Why did they behave the way they do? Why did they present the way they do today? Those are all very important factors in understanding why the person did what they did and understanding who's sitting in front of us. And as an attorney, when I work with attorneys, it is so important to have this service because I help the attorney with the client, the background, the mental health background, the biopsychosocial background of the client affects how the client communicates with the attorney, how they can assist in their own defense. So if you have a client in front of you that is completely mute, won't talk to you, it might not be that they're being evasive. or they're being apathetic. It could be that they're in freeze, they're having a trauma response. If you have a client in front of you that is irritable, argumentative, it might not be that that's a character flaw or who they are. They could be in, fight or flight mode. So it's really important to understand those things. And with my help, I can help the attorneys interact with their clients in a way that is productive to their defense.
I found it fascinating that it's a story it's a true story, apparently, of a crime duo, if you will. Uh, gosh, back in the day, known as Leopold and Loeb. And basically, I found it fascinating because separately, if you will, they were mastermind criminals, so to speak. However, individually, they weren't capable of doing any of the things they did. The other was the missing part for each other, if that makes any sense. It fueled their crime actions, their criminal activity, and I think they did a lot of bank robberies. I believe I got to go back on my reading on that, but nonetheless, where I'm going with that is that something that you find often that maybe if there's more than one person involved, is the other God, that one word I'm looking for inspires that person, and I know that's the wrong word. Have you ever encountered that where a person that's doing some bad things normally wouldn't do that because of some extenuating factors?
Absolutely. The word we use for this is trauma bond. So clinically, trauma bond means something different than how it's used in the everyday vernacular. The best analogy for a trauma bond is imagine two puzzle pieces. Independently, they're just two puzzle pieces, but they fit together perfectly. And as that puzzle, they can create chaos. So it's basically one person fueling another person and vice versa, whether it's through coercive control or domination. It's basically one person meets the other person's unfulfilled needs or triggers those core wounds that feel normal to them. So someone who grew up being controlled and in chaos, that's going to feel familiar. So being in a relationship with someone like that, if they tell them, we're going to go do this, they're going to be supportive because that chaos is familiar.
Hmm. And it's like a drug, isn't it?
Absolutely. And so if we look at betrayal trauma, it does cause dopamine, oxytocin, and it becomes this vicious cycle. And that's why people can't get out of it.
Hmm.
It's almost like a drug addiction, but it's just more biological chemicals. The dopamine, the rush that people receive in those types of relationships keep them there.
And yeah, and there's no way in hell they're going to leave because then they'd be lost.
Absolutely. And, a lot of times when we're looking at these type of people, they have attachment trauma. So people with attachment trauma are not going to risk rupturing that relationship by saying, no, I don't want to commit this crime, or no, I don't want to do this. People with attachment trauma will do anything to hold on to the person they're attached to.
And earlier, you alluded to in your analysis of clients, lawyers' clients, attorneys' clients, would you call them patients of yours or what would you call them clients?
I would call them clients
Okay.
because typically, and this is, the best way to do it is I am brought on by the attorney. And the reasoning for that is I have privilege. If I'm hired by the attorney, there's privilege. If I'm hired by the client, there is not. So
Ah,
I call them clients.
very good. So, does the humanization of your client when he or she is being accused of a crime or an act of violence and so on, right? Et cetera, et cetera. What is the biggest misunderstanding or the biggest assumption that people have about someone being labeled with whatever they're being labeled as or charged with. There's a human being inside this life that's being analyzed or looked at, correct?
Absolutely. And it's very easy for a judge, the jurors, the general public that's watching on TV for these crimes that are so heinous, they're
Mhm.
publicized, to look at someone and only what they did and see them as a monster. We look at the victim and we see this person as a monster, but we rarely look at the person and say, what happened to them? How did they get here today?
And have you ever been shocked, or let's just say you like, whoa, when you uncovered or peeled back the layers of the onion on a particular client? Did something you never saw coming, and then boom, there it is.
I wish I could say yes to that answer, but after doing this for 15 years, I pretty much anticipate before the client even tells me that this is the trauma history based off the crime they committed, how they're presenting. I have a pretty good idea of what the trauma history is. And sometimes it is more graphic than I thought. But shocked, no. And,
Yeah.
in this field, I've seen a lot of terrible, terrible things. It's
Right.
surprising the things that happen to people, and they're able to stand back up and be resilient and, walk around and be functional.
And is it surprising to you that you're not shocked anymore?
No, you develop in this line of work, you develop the ability to compartmentalize and
Right.
thick skin pretty early in, because this is a job you couldn't do
Right.
without that
Exactly.
ability.
And I guess when questioning your client or clients, uh, along with knowing that they're going to be cross-examined, knowing that they're going to be interrogated, knowing that they're going to be interviewed at the very least, at what point do you advise the attorneys that, hey, this guy or this gal has some trigger points, so might want to know about these things when you're asking these particular questions? For example, where do you live could even be something that sets them off. Am I totally in left field on that?
You are not. So immediately after the evaluation, and I've written up the clinical report or summary, I will speak with the attorney and give them, my clinical opinion. This tone of voice, this wording, this line of questioning is going to put your client in a trauma defense mode. So we need to make sure that this line of questioning does not happen this way, and it needs to be delivered in a certain way to get the best results from your client, because we need your client not to be triggered during this. We need your client to be thinking from a place of prefrontal cortex. We don't want them in fight or flight or freeze mode where they're speaking impulsively, because that can be really damaging to their case when they're blurting out things versus thinking through their answers.
What about physiology? Does certain parts of the brain matter more in these types of situations? For example, Wernicke's area, as an example, frontal lobes. What? And this is coming from a layperson, so excuse maybe the silliness of the question, but I'm really curious. Are there certain areas of the brain that are bigger factors than not?
Yes. So when we're looking at any trauma survivor or someone with maladaptive behaviors or coping skills, the two parts of the brain that matter most are the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. So the amygdala stores the trauma. And in most people with childhood trauma, that the amygdala, imagine it like a room with a light switch. that light switch is on all the time. The room is never able to just be natural light. So when that happens, the prefrontal cortex can't function appropriately, meaning the ability to control impulses, to play the tape forward, to look at consequences, to have very thoughtful, organized thinking isn't always online.
That's very interesting because I've always wondered about that. Sometimes people who have suffered TBIs, traumatic brain injuries, due to no fault of their own, right? But maybe through the negligence of others, car accident, 18-wheeler collision, what have you. Uh, Next thing you know, they start acting just bizarrely, right? If that's even a word. And just start doing things that they normally wouldn't do prior or pre-accident, right? So I always wondered if that was a fact.
100% a factor. Where our brain is at is 100% a factor and causation of our behavior.
Fantastic. And what is, for everyone listening right now, and including myself, what is a day in the life of Lindsey DWYER-TONG?
A day in the life, it's a long day. I do a lot of sessions, trauma therapy sessions with clients. I do crisis intervention with clients. And what crisis intervention looks like is I'm looking at the client and their current crisis, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm also looking at their entire ecosystem, what's happening in the home, what's happening at work, what's happening financially, what's happening in their relationships. Because you can't just treat what's happening right now. You have to treat all these other factors.
Puzzle.
Right. The puzzle. You have to treat every other factor because you're just looking at a symptom. You have to treat the underlying cause of that symptom if you're truly going to heal someone. And so that, is a good segue into what I do with attorneys. Our justice system, a lot of times, is punitive. It's not
Mm,
restorative.
yeah.
And through looking at the client through a trauma-informed lens, I can help attorneys advocate for alternative sentencing that is more rehabilitative than punitive. I've worked a lot of cases with attorneys where we have younger individuals who have committed a crime for the first time. There were a lot of mitigating factors around that, and sending them to prison would ruin the rest of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So,
If they
uh,
made it out alive.
right, if they made it out alive, given the types of clients we're working with, no interaction with the justice system, growing up in affluent families where they're used to avoiding consequences.
Mm,
Um,
good point.
Yeah, mitigation is so important there. I have two clients in particular that come to mind. Their lives could have been ruined. Once you get it, yeah, you're familiar with this. Once you get into the justice system and get into the correctional system, it creates a pattern that's really hard to get out of.
A lot of lawyers here in Bear County, and also, or for those that don't know, they see it on paper. It looks like it's Bexar County. People here, lawyers here, attorneys here, even some that from out of state that I've had on the show, a lot of them are advocating for a mental health kind of situation, remedy, if you will, as an alternative to jail and prison. All of their reasonings, you pretty much align. And this isn't a partisan issue. It's literally something that everybody can get behind because there's no need in somebody who has mental health issues. A lot of times they pick up clients and they're either uh, retained or court appointed from people who have served in the military. Veterans Court is where I'm going with that.
Okay.
So a lot of these veterans have PTSD, seen a lot of bad things that most people don't see, right, in their lives. And so they maybe over medicate, uh, over drink, what have you, but commit these crimes. And then now, which is pretty fantastic, they have a thing called Veterans Court. So if you're a veteran, you're
Amazing.
going to this particular court as opposed to a regular court. How do you feel about that?
That's incredible. Is this something that's just happening in Texas?
I know that we 100% have it going on here. We've had, like I said, quite a bit of different attorneys from all parts of the country. And when that subject comes up, they're all for it, no matter what, right? They don't want their clients having to go to prison or jail if they already have a problem, because they're not going to get treated there, right? People have this misconception too that there's no way in hell you can get your hands on drugs in jail or prison. In fact, it's pretty rampant.
Right. That's a really easy place to get it.
Correct. So if you're trying to get clean, that's the worst place to put you. Uh, so I just wanted to know if your services actually, which I can't see how they would not 100% fall in line with assisting an attorney. And a lot of the attorneys that listen to this show and that are listening right now do veterans court cases, especially here in Texas. I want to give a shout out to you on that, to have all of these attorneys listening to definitely give you a call on this, because this is, I mean, this is a no brainer. If these people are veterans and suffering from some kind of mental health issue and committed a heinous crime or what have you, I know people, there'll be a faction of people saying, well, they deserve to get punished. You got to look at the whole picture. And as we talked about, you got to put all the pieces of the puzzle together.
And I'm glad you brought up that point. A lot of people say that mitigation and using trauma informed care is an excuse and helping someone avoid accountability. It's not that. It's not avoiding accountability. It's taking accountability and taking the actions necessary to fix what got you there. And that is, what's best for the individual and society, to rehabilitate someone versus putting them in jail and having that cycle continue. And sometimes I hear, oh, well, someone will get treatment in jail. No, the type of treatment you get in jail is subpar, to say the least, right? And the issue with that is we're creating secondary trauma.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yes.
trauma that led to the act while they're sitting there in that courtroom is going to be exacerbated.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of times people don't think about jail in itself. Prison is very traumatizing. You live in a constant state of fight or flight.
Yeah.
You're always
But you
having to be
can't leave.
right. You're always having to be hyper vigilant for your safety, including when you sleep. Imagine not being able to sleep, to lay your head down at night knowing you're going to be safe.
Yeah. And as we both know, bad things happen sometimes in there when you're not on guard. So if you're constantly in high alert defense mode,
No, people leave significantly worse than when they went in.
and you know what's weird too is, I mean, I was just thinking about this, and then when they do get out, uh, then they can't handle society, so they'll do whatever they have to get back in.
That is a phenomenon that I see a lot. It's not safe. They don't know the world outside anymore. And we see this with trauma survivors all the time. It's the familiar chaos. Even if it's unsafe, it's the familiar chaos.
I'm going to be having a very special segment coming up in the very near future with a gentleman by the name of Kerry Max Cook, who literally was screaming from the top of his lungs, the highest mountain possible, that he did not commit this crime, did not commit it, on and on. Well, 40 years later, in fact, they found out he was telling the truth. And our criminal Supreme Court here in Texas is called the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. And one amazing judge there by the name of Judge Burt Richardson uh, got a hold of this case and reviewed it. Wow, brevity is everything, right?
Right.
For these lawyers, it turns out he was telling the truth. And in layman's terms, Judge Richardson wrote an opinion. Now, what we know that word to be in common use in society is, oh, well, that's just your opinion kind of thing. Well, an opinion from a judge with the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals carries a ton of weight. And that opinion literally can free you. And it did for Kerry Max Cook. This crime happened in the 70s. So when he went in, there was no such thing as computers, laptops, cell phone. You get my drift here.
Right.
So he gets out, and literally it's found that there was no way in hell he could have committed this, right? What they did, it's here in Texas. I don't know if they have it in California, but in Texas, you're given, and of course, no amount of money is ever going to bring back that time, but they gave him $80,000 times 40 for the years that he spent in there. So when he walked out of prison, and he actually was on death row,
Oh, wow.
and he was on death row for a bit. And, that's another thing, here any day now, you could be fried, so to speak, knowing that you did not commit this crime. So anyhow, so when he walked out, yeah, they handed him a check for $3.2 million. But that's, you know, I've asked many legal experts, what do you think about that price? And they were like, well, that's no way is that even close to buying back all that time, right? So
Right. Or
I just thought
damaged.
that's interesting. He's going to be on, and we're going to talk about all this. Nothing's off limits. So it's going to be interesting. I cannot wait to have that conversation with him.
It's incredible that he's come out with that mentality.
Yeah.
No amount of money can undo that trauma. And a large portion of that money is most likely going to go to therapy and, treating the significant trauma that created. So
Hmm.
we now know that trauma is a brain injury. It eats
Yeah.
away at your brain.
I can see that for sure.
Yeah. So it's a true medical injury.
It makes me mad, number one, because he shouldn't have had that inflicted on it. Everybody failed him. The prosecutor, the judge, the police, the detectives. I mean, go down the line, throw them in there too. They failed him. And, so now it's like, okay, and pardon my French, I'm sorry, we fucked up, but here's the deal. We're going to give you some money, and we're sorry. I mean, to me,
That's
that's
not good
another,
enough.
that's not good enough for me. I mean, I just, like I said, I'm so glad he came out with this mentality, not being bitter. And who knows, right? Maybe he is. He's not showing that. And the way he's carrying on with his life, he's married now. God, he's happy, of course, to be free. And I'm a huge advocate in mental health. We have been for the 4.5, almost 5 years now that we've been doing this. We're huge, huge mental health advocates here, and anything that we can do to get behind that, we're there. So that's why having you on today is such an honor and a privilege for us.
Well, I appreciate you having me on and having my insight on why this is so important. And, that timeline you're giving, in August of 2022, the Justice Department actually released an initiative called the Sequential Intercept Model. And that is
Ooh,
exactly what I do.
wow.
It's trauma informed care, and it looks at from start to finish in the criminal justice system.
Now, is this
We
state to
need to
state, or how does
This
that
is
work?
US Department of
Oh,
Justice.
okay. Wow.
And yes. So unfortunately, I don't think that this is being practiced in every state. And having my career begin in Texas, I can tell you that Texas has always been more sympathetic and understanding of mental health. And this is just an opinion, um, from working in California. It's a lot harder to push a mental health defense and to bring in mitigating factors. In my experience here, it's still seen as an excuse versus a reason.
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of well-known hosts out there that would have a lot to say about that in your state. They apparently they don't like giving y'all water, from what we hear, but
California, I love it.
that's just what I heard.
Yeah, I mean, I love California, but it is an interesting place in terms of laws and how they handle things. I have always felt that Texas has been compassionate. So at the start of my career, I actually, for about a year, went to mental health court with clients who had been put on 72-hour holds, and just seeing the compassion from the attorneys and the judges and looking at the whole picture. I mean, that was going on 15 years ago in Texas. I wish the rest of the nation would follow suit.
I actually know a couple of them in our hub. Our hub city, by the way, is San Antonio, Texas. We love San Antonio. My heart, I think we've talked about off air on how my other part of my heart belongs there in LA. I've been there so many times. Beverly Hills, I just love it there. I just had the every time I hear that or I hear that song, "It Never Rains in Southern California," I immediately take it back to all the but here in San Antonio, I've gotten to know a lot of the mental health judges and have picked their brains a lot on some of what their thoughts are on where it's going, where it began, where it is now, and where they see it going. And I'm optimistically hopeful that things are going to be changing for the better. At least here, as we talked about, this is a more sympathetic state for those issues. And from what I'm hearing, the future looks pretty bright.
That's just so incredible. And, as I'm thinking of Texas, that's so special considering where they stand with death penalty and other women's reproductive rights issues. So I'm just very grateful that that's where they're at with mental health.
Yeah, one of our past governors, his slogan was, here in Texas, if you kill one of us, we're going to kill you.
Sounds about right.
What is the biggest takeaway you want every attorney that's listening right now? What's the biggest takeaway that you want to leave them with today?
The biggest takeaway would be that my services and others who offer these forensic consulting services, our role is not to impede what you're doing.
Hmm.
It's, not to step on your toes.
Right.
It is to complement your services, to assist you to make working with this client and the defense strategy in this case easier for you.
That's fantastic. I believe so heavily in what you're doing, and we love having you on here and informing us because I want people to be armed. There's from day one since we started this podcast, I've had one mandate since we started this, and that's to leave our listeners and viewership better than the way we found them. We want them to be armed with the knowledge. We want them to know that they have options, knowing their rights, knowing that they have a voice, right? Because so many of these people think they don't have any voices. And even the ones that are suffering with mental health issues, they may be hearing this and saying, you know what? That's me right there. If it just helps, I think you've said this before too, if it just helps one person, then we've done our job.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So how can folks reach you if they want your services? And I can't imagine why they would not be blowing your phone up immediately after this. Tell them exactly how they can reach you to hire you.
Go to my website, tongconcierge.com, or email me at lindsey@tongconcierge.com. That is the best way to get in contact with me. I do have a phone number, but email is the best route.
Lindsey, I cannot thank you enough for taking time out of your busy schedule to spend it with us today, educate us today, and inform us today, because it has been an absolute honor having you on. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
I appreciate you having me.
Give the attorneys and the broader community out there as well listening, give them your final words on today's episode.
When we're looking at a client, we're seeing them at the worst moment in their life. It's important that we don't judge them based off one moment in time.
Just like they shouldn't be judged for the worst day in their lives, correct?
Right. We're not seeing someone in front of us who is at the peak, the best point in their life. We're seeing someone at the worst time in their life who could be scared. Am I going to be put away for a very long time? Am I going to lose my career, my family, or possibly my life?
Right.
And to remember that this person is not that one act. There's so much more to them. And it's important to tell that story, not to excuse the behavior, but to explain it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lindsey DWYER-TONG. Lindsey, thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me.